Good evening, YouTube world. Good evening, Facebook. Good evening, Instagram, or it's actually that's Twitter. We're also live on. I am Youssef. With me is Tasha. Welcome to the Joko, dear people. Tonight we have a special program, or at least we hope we're going to have a special program, right? Practicing sovereignty through people's tribunals. The state is problematic. How can we address our contradictions without having to involve the state? How have we done that? How can we do that? As always, Joko makes it a point and a practice to always acknowledge that we, the Joko, we do this work on the unceded lands of the Tongva people and the Chumash people of what's called the Los Angeles Basin and the Southern California coastal area. Unceded lands that always remind us, and we always want to be reminded, that the United States is a settler colonial society. And in this moment, with the heroic resistance of the Palestinian people, settler colonialism has been put on front stage. And it is the settler colonialists who are in support of the settler colonial state of Israel. Tonight, our special guest, who hasn't arrived yet, but we hope will be with us, very soon, and we'll see, has visited us before. I've been a guest and panelist many, many times for the Joko, and that is James M. Simmons.
Good brother James.
Good brother James. James is a human rights attorney, a professor in the Africana Studies Department at California State University, Northridge. He is a political activist and has worked for human rights and self-determination of oppressed people and against exploitation and oppression of people by individual predators, organized oppressors, and governments over the last 5 decades. He's also a firm believer in training and organizing for personal and collective self and community defense. James has worked on self-determined, community-based efforts to address violence, sexual violence, torture, theft, elder abuse in numerous cases since 1990, including organizing and developing a national effort to address a violent attack and resulting hospitalization of an elderly activist and former political prisoner by a so-called militant organization. Addressing the sexual and financial abuse of a physically compromised comrade elder by their caretaker. Advising community organizers in East Los Angeles relating to violence and stalking between community activists and organizations. He is a member of the National Revolutionary Council of Africans for Ma'at and a member of the committee, in which capacity James investigated, organized, and sanctioned a so-called militant leader for numerous instances of sexual exploitation, torture, rape, theft, and other offenses, effectively banning him from Los Angeles since 2014. And that was a process of a people's tribunal, of sectors of the community coming together to find a way to sanction this individual without having to bring in the state, which is disruptive, to say the least, and also without having to resort to an internecine violence that could escalate. So, James isn't with us yet. So we are hoping that James will join us shortly. We, Brother James is busy, like all of us, and that bio should indicate that.
Right. And stuff happens. We understand
Stuff
stuff
happens.
happens.
So
So,
we're going to go forward without him, because we were just going to have a conversation, right? I mean, this wasn't going to be specifically an interview with James, although kind of, but conversationally, and not specifically about that or any particular tribunal, but the principles behind it, the principles that
yes.
support it, and inform the practice. One of which is in our title, right? The principle of sovereignty, and specifically, Black people, Africans, right? Africans in the diaspora or diaspora. I think both of those diaspora, where we don't hold state power, right? And perhaps even in places where we do, but the state is unresponsive, right? A neo-colonial state that may be, in the Caribbean or the continent or other places. What can the community do, right, to address some of these criminal, abusive contradictions without bringing in the state?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the topic of our conversation. Hopefully, James will join us. Tasha, I just want to add, can I ask you a question?
Okay.
And it's until James gets here, it's just
Before you do, let me
go ahead.
let me go ahead and frame up what I wanted to kind of frame up, and as you said, right, and it's kind of anybody who might be tuning in who knows that 2024 is the anniversary the 10th anniversary of a very particular tribunal effort that was held in Los Angeles back in 2014. We'll appreciate also that we're not naming it, okay? And it's kind of deliberate. If James joins us and decides to name, that tribunal, but as you have said, the specific tribunal is actually not important, is not significant in terms of the opportunity to discuss this practice of agency, and the essential questions that it raises, right? The essential questions that it raises about how we view ourselves as a nation. When I was talking to, and what the basis of that sense of continuity is, when I was talking to James preliminarily in preparation for the program, one of the things he said was, well, the folk who organized that committee or who participated in that committee and were part and parcel of figuring out how to organize the flow, what needed to be in, what, creating a structure, creating the infrastructure, right, for investigation, creating infrastructure for community observation, of the process, creating an infrastructure for adjudication, okay, which ultimately is, is the term. And this, this piece, part of what strikes me, or let me say, what he said was like, yeah, the folk who are were part of that committee think of themselves as new Africans, right? They
Mm-hmm.
consider themselves as, really part of the Republic of New Africa tradition, and
Right.
in that, um, relating and operating in that very specific context. And what was quite part of what was striking to me, because in any of this question, and a question that popped up during the process, what gives you the right? Under
Mm-hmm.
who gives you, under whose authority, right? These
Mm-hmm.
essential questions of authority, these essential questions of who adjudicates, right? Who makes decisions about what happens. And so it was this really interesting contradiction or juxtaposition of moods,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was, because the community observers, the uh, community jurors, right? A collective of folk. Hello, here is our James.
Oh
Hello,
my!
yay,
There we go.
yay.
I got a call like, well, where are you?
So let me reach out to my sister side. Sister side will find our brother James.
There we
No,
go.
that was the noble mistress Tandy Sizwe Shimaranga.
Oh, the noble mistress Tandi Seasway. Great.
There
Thank
we
Yes,
you,
go.
yes.
sister noble mistress Tandi Seasway. Yes. And so
All
great. So
right.
let's tell you where we've come to.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what I was just launching into, one of the things that we established was that we're not necessarily even naming the 2014 tribunal, or its actors. In your bio, we read the line that said yes, he was part of, organizing a community tribunal against a community leader who, engaged in X, Y, and Z. So those who know, and those
Mm-hmm.
who don't are having a conversation about what it means to assume power, what it
Right.
means to take power and make something work. And so I was just launching into what you had told me about the possible self-description of the folks on the committee as new Africans, and
Mm-hmm.
feeling right, being in the tradition, the literal tradition of the Republic of New Africa, and embracing that set of values and methods and approaches and understandings.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's kind of where we have brought the conversation to. Yeah. And this notion of these questions, these essential questions of what gives you, whoever you is, the
Mm-hmm.
right, the authority, the jurisdiction, the this, the that, right, to set up this kind of process. So why don't we start with that? Anything you want to respond to with that?
Okay. Let me find my glasses so I can look scholarly.
Okay. Put on your glasses so you can look cool.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. Well, I can't find them, so I just have to look like myself.
Oh, that's
Oh
okay.
Uh,
wow.
um. Yeah, it is from the beginning. It's like, why do we, in terms of the collective, uh, have the right? What gives us the right to try another member of the community?
Mm-hmm.
And as the great Tiny Caesar Shimaranga commented, something to the effect of just watch and see. We are well in this, both in this tribunal, in terms of before there was a tribunal, there was organizing, and there's a wide range of community members with diverse ideological leanings and practices. Some were considered themselves New Africans. I think all of us considered ourselves Pan-Africans. We believed in community action. We believed that we had a right to correct wrongs in the community. So when the Nation of Islam puts together in various parts of the country anti-drug patrols, I don't think there's much pushback. It's like, good, somebody's doing something. Apparently the police can't do it, or they do it wrong. When people want to clean up the community in terms of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, spousal abuse, domestic abuse. If the government is or isn't doing it, when people engage to these problems, I don't think too many people say, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. What gives you the right? The right is inherent in our situation. The right is the right of a people to control their destiny, their this self-determination. And I'm sure there's a whole lot of people who would fight the concept that the descendants of Africans or Black people, whatever you want to call, because there's such a diverse range of thinking on where Black people come from and who they are and who we are.
Yeah.
But the thing is, one thing that we were definitely not, were citizens of this country prior to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. We have a different history than the rest of the country. Not to say that we are the only ones with a different history. Again, the indigenous people of this land have a different history. They were here. They had genocide committed on them. Wouldn't it be ridiculous for them to say, "Oh, Uncle Sam, could you please help us?" Well, because number one, it was done, and then what did they have to show for it?
Right.
Broken treaties, foul court decisions, pernicious legislation and rules, and bureaucracy that started out under the Department of War, and then shifted to what is it? The
Department of the Interior.
Department of the Interior, land management, like their cactus or jojoba trees or something,
or bighorn sheep.
Yeah, bighorn sheep. So, and we always have to mind that besides idiotic statements like what's her name, who was running for president as a Republican,
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley saying that America has never been racist.
Right.
It's like, are you stupid? I mean, or just ignorant, or a liar. It has to be one of the three or a combination. And so when we look and see how problems get solved, we have segregation, we have slavery and segregation, and then there's a Cold War, and then these people say, hey, we we're going around talking about democracy, and these Negroes are saying we don't have democracy in this country. Well, how about that? We don't have democracy in this country.
Right.
You know, we
Mhm.
didn't. They couldn't say that they had democracy. Black people were excluded from the democracy. So a lot of the problems we had, we had to take care of ourselves internally. There was
Mm-hmm.
no federal anti-lynching legislation, and you certainly couldn't go to the local sheriff
Right.
because they
Right.
might have been the ones providing the
Mm-hmm.
torches and the guns.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think it's been understood that Black people in this country constitute a specific political entity, a nation, and that's the way we look at it. There's a Black nation,
Right.
and that's why we couch things in nationhood,
Mhm.
and rather than specifying, do you promise to, do
Mhm.
you swear to God? No,
Mhm.
do you put that on your mama, your papa, your children, and the Black
Mm-hmm.
nation?
Mhm. Mhm.
The language of our allegations was crouching. These are offenses against the Black nation. So who else can we
Mhm.
go to?
Mhm.
We can't go.
Mhm.
I mean, it'd be foolish to go to Uncle Sam. And that's the other thing. The people who were abused and stolen
Mm-hmm.
from and
Mm-hmm.
tortured,
Mm-hmm.
they said, well, they didn't go to the state. We weren't going to the state. This was not a thing that we felt the state should
Mhm.
be involved with.
Right.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
the people didn't
Mhm.
trust them, they trusted us.
Mhm. Mhm.
They
Mhm.
didn't trust the state,
Mhm.
and by the
Mhm.
state I mean the government.
Right.
When I
Mhm.
say state, I
Mhm.
mean government. Not just the
Mhm.
state of California, but the United States
Mhm.
government, whoever
Mhm.
else, city of
Mhm.
Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles. Um, so this is where we get our jurisdiction in any
Mhm.
kind of struggle for national liberation and independence and self-determination, um, especially if it's about land,
Mm-hmm.
whether on the continent of Africa, Papua New Guinea, Hawaii, Palestine, Cote d'Ivoire, wherever, Congo, uh, Guinea-Bissau, uh, they would liberate territory and implement the laws that they were ideally what people could depend on, in trying to grow to and to support their nation, and
Mm-hmm.
not just. Uh, can you imagine Amilcar Cabral taking the problems of Guinea-Bissau and Cape
Right.
Verde Islands or Angola or
Mhm.
Mozambique to the
Right.
Portuguese to
Right.
solve?
Right.
They're the source of
Mhm.
most of the problem.
Mhm.
So it'd
Mm-hmm.
be ridiculous. So
Mm-hmm.
if not us, who?
Right.
Mhm.
If
Is
not
that
us, who?
is that part of international law? If is the liberating force responsible to provide those services for the people in liberated zones, the way an
Uh,
occupier would be responsible for certain things?
well, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it from a colonizer's
Mhm.
point of view, then no, the colonizer
Right. Liberator
is
is
going
right.
to be
The terrorist, the
the
insurgent, the this, the that.
yes, the PAIGC and the MPLA and the Zimbabwe African National Union and
Mm-hmm.
uh, all those people. Yeah, they're renegades, terrorists, whatever. So no, they have no justification,
Mm.
and
According
um,
to the
according to the
law,
colonizer,
right? Yeah.
right? But if you take over responsibility, and
Mm-hmm.
in no way am I suggesting that we
Mhm.
are some kind of liberation
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
We're
Yeah.
just like a
Right.
microscopic
Right.
example of people trying to solve a problem through their own means.
Mm-hmm.
Which I want to pick up on, right? Because the question that comes for me in this, the essential question is, what is it that is the actual substance of the nation, you know? And the way this, and also to say that adjudication and conflict resolution is a process that intimately speaks to values, cultures, and a kind of integrity. And I don't mean moral integrity, I mean the integrity of the community. It speaks to right, this contiguity that is usually associated, right, with land, that is, associated with the part of the national identity with land, right? But there is something here that had folk, right, because this particular, tribunal was not only an effort, but it was a success. Yeah.
Yeah.
And folks engaging in that, you're right, in that process of adjudication, it speaks to, I don't want to use this reference, but the consent of the governed. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or
Hmm.
the consent of the, and which is not precisely the situation, but the consent of the participants. There was a community consent
Mm-hmm.
to that, and without which none of that could work. And that seems
Mm-hmm.
to me, none of the success would be possible, which seems
Mm-hmm.
to me to be the definition of the national spirit, right? If
Mm-hmm.
the ways in which we problem solve and adjudicate, because adjudication is what, like a fundamental reassertion of the values of the group,
Hmm.
right? A
Hmm.
application of the values of the group to, these incidents of disintegration. How do we bring it back together? So there's an it that's presumed, right? So I'm seeing this as something so significant, and so that speaks so powerfully to our level of collective identity, juxtaposed, in that instance. This wasn't just internal, as is said and said, to one organization or a couple of organizations that work together. The folks, even like in the jury situation, the folks attending were from all walks of life in the community. Every, you know what I'm saying? So they're the y'all come.
Hmm.
We had some kind of this kind of fundamental identity that
Mm-hmm.
made this adjudication process possible, made an adjudication process thinkable and possible. And I thought it revealed something, very powerful about what nation actually is, as something that transcends the land base.
Right. Absolutely. Uh,
Yes. It looks like, okay, James is back. There was a little freeze there for a minute.
oh, sorry.
You're back with us, James.
Okay. I didn't know I went anywhere.
Yeah, it was just a little quick little thing. Yeah.
Okay. But one of the things that we did, and like, is to look, where can we deal with this issue? It was a critical issue. People were being harmed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the movement for Black liberation was being compromised.
Mm-hmm.
It was being brought into disrepute. For those of us old enough, in the '60s, there was a lot of, like, the Black cinema was big, and a lot of revolutionary activity was going on, and it was depicted on the screen. But also at the same time, they would bring up, they say, yeah, those revolutionaries, they're killers, they're thieves, they're grifters, they're anything but authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And especially on TV shows, anytime you had a so-called
Mm-hmm.
Black militant, they were either
Right.
trying to get in somebody's panties, steal
Right.
somebody's money,
Mm-hmm.
get some kind of political edge, but never was it for the benefit of the people. And we had to fight against that. So this question of, where do you get the right? I think that some of that is rooted in, black folks can't keep nothing together, and black folks, they just trying to make some money, and accused of collaborating with the state. Oh, and that's the other thing, being snitches, being accused of these vile alliances, because we dare go up against somebody who needed to be corrected. We looked at a whole collection of codes of conduct in the world of Black liberation and people's liberation. Around Africa, these liberation movements, in the Asian liberation movements in so-called Latin America, and in the United States. We also looked at processes that had occurred prior to this particular instance. In 1980, there was a tribunal against LAPD. And some of the members of, or some of the people who participated in this tribunal were a part of that. And that was effective. It was so effective that one of the police officers who had infiltrated community groups was called out. They ruled against him, and they gave him an unwanted poster, and they put it up around the community, unwanted. It was broadcast on the news. They thought he had been kidnapped because these posters were all over and he had disappeared. Turns out he had jumped in his car and started riding north because he was scared. And what shows the effectiveness? And it's like, okay, this is one good example. We had there have been several tribunals held. Again, one which I was a part of, I think it was 1990 or 92, somewhere early 90s, put on by the American Indian movement. And it said, charging the United States government with genocide. Well, of course, this had been done in the 50s. William Patterson, we charged genocide. It had been done in other places. And the American Indian movement invited other oppressed people. So there was the Black New African Nation. There was the Chicano Mexicano. And we and others, and we all talked about, these instances where we could continue that tradition of charging the United States with the genocide, and had people testify from the Black Panther Party. One of the comrades who had was accused was in prison for refusing to cooperate with the grand jury looking for Assata Shakur. And Mutulu Shakur. And there was a elders council in Atlanta who had there was an armed attack on one community organization by some others, and they came to a conclusion that people were basically called out, two of which participated in the tribunal we did in 2014. It doesn't mean that the people are thrown away. It doesn't mean that we have to harm people, because that's all. We also have a tradition of that,
right,
where people get accused of committing crimes against the people and then they wind up dead, or they wind up severely abused,
Mhm.
tortured, or otherwise. And that's, we used examples from the past to not only talk about what we could do and should do, but what we shouldn't do,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and which we should refrain from
Mhm.
doing.
Mhm.
So we had all these examples in the past. We had a path laid out for us. In part, you know, we had to make our own steps because this
Mhm.
is previously unexplored ground for the people and the participants and the those affected by this bad behavior. So we took all that into account, from around the world, from around the United States, from around the African world, and from around
Mhm.
the city of Los Angeles, the Southern California. So when they called, some people were accusing Captain Franco, the Black Panther, Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, accused him of being a police informant. He wound up dead. Was that necessary? Was he? And it doesn't appear that he was.
Mhm.
Could that have been worked out? Now, one of the attendees, um, someone who has been in the movement, he's still alive, but he had been in the movement in the 60s, and he was critical, very critical. And then at the first break, at the first lunch break of the first day, he said, you know what? If this had been in effect in the 60s and 70s, so many people, we wouldn't have lost so many people.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that we want that I know I appreciated that comment, but that's one thing that I think we should do, not just run around solving political or other problems with lead and
Mhm.
steel. Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
we can use our minds, and we can use
Mhm.
our good judgment,
Mhm.
and come up with creative ways. It's like
Mhm.
one of the
Mhm.
things with how are you going to enforce uh, your will on this person? How are you going to do that?
Mhm.
And it took months. It took
Mhm.
months to think of a way to
Mhm.
effectively do this.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, and so, okay, we'll just ban them, right? With conditions. And
Mhm.
even that was a fight, because it was like, let's have an outright ban. Yeah, but black people be like, oh, just, oh man, let him slide. He suffered enough. No, give him conditions, and if he wants to come back, he'll fulfill
Mhm.
the
The
conditions.
conditions, right? So,
Mhm.
so
It's
it
been 10
isn't just
years.
throwing them away, though.
Yeah,
There's a
not just
path
throwing him
back.
away. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's been 10 years and he has not fulfilled the conditions.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
again, this is a learning process. It was a learning process
Mhm.
for us. Everything is new, and um, next time somebody does this, because one thing we said, we are not tribunals or us.
Yes.
That somebody
Mhm.
else can do this work, and
Mhm.
we can advise, we could do all kinds of stuff. We may
Mhm.
even participate,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but somebody else should pick up this work, which is
Mhm.
one of my
Yeah.
uh, uh, something you're going to hear me say a lot in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Somebody need to pick up this work.
Yeah. Next level. As you're saying, there's a witness from a credible source, right? If we had had this, we would have avoided, right? And that avoidance would have no doubt bolstered not only the movement itself, but would have counteracted
Yeah.
the discrediting of revolutionary black people and radical black people. That would have been an
Mhm.
active, something for the community to witness. And what I'm going into is kind of highlighting or wanting to highlight the importance of finding that next level uh, of establishing uh, this kind of process, uh, looking for the need to establish this kind of process in the way that the successes of 2014 are modeled. And again, this whole question of how to enforce, it's such an interesting question, because what actually became the right, that speaks to a belief, our conditioned belief in the that equates power with militarism, that equates power with police force, which creates power with the power of violence to enact, right, to produce a greater harm,
Mm-hmm.
to squash a smaller harmer. Theoretically, it's kind of what's being said, but what's revealed here, right, is that there is this force. Essentially, this was a shunning. This an
Mhm.
effective shunning, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
whole piece about the conditionality of return speaks to um, a kind of community self-consciousness as a holistic unit with holistic values, in other words, right? Um, values that are uh, generative, right? With generative values, and they're generative so they can be self-creative, and the community can proceed and can go on. Yeah. Um, and so this piece about, how to continue that conversation, and recognizing, to me it's so important and so significant that this was solved without a reduced and restrained that person's harm until this day, right? The
Mm-hmm.
realm and the what the circumference of the harm that could be caused until this day. Yeah. And without imposing any other, in a nonviolent manner, right? Without imposing any additional harm, that it's really important for it to get taken up at that higher level. It was because, and then you did mention about drawing on the different liberatory struggles, and of course, part of what emerged here was the code of ethics, right? That you uh, coordinated, edited, how to that you brought together and
Mm-hmm.
articulated. And to my recollection, that brought the same kind of question of, or reaction: who has the authority? How do you get to establish a code of ethics? Or how can one, requiring people to conform to a code of ethics? That there's that kind of tension
Mm-hmm.
that maybe prevents it from becoming something that can be truly integral at a higher level. Yeah, at more than a regional level. Was the If you can talk further about the code of ethics, how it was received, um, and that kind of discussion, that pushback, was this considered a regional issue, a local problem that had a local solution, that people in other parts of the nation were like, yeah, we support that, but it's not, quote unquote, an our issue? Was it regionalized, or what happened with the
Yeah,
embrace?
yeah, that was a big issue. That it's like, who, not only what gives us the right, but what does that got to do with us? You know, beyond Los Angeles, and uh, we took trips to explain it in Oakland. We were going to go to somewhere in Texas to talk about this again. And I don't even know what to think about the invitation that we had received,
Hmm.
because I don't know. But we also, is it 2015 when uh, Daruba Wahad was uh, uh, went to a meeting and was beaten, had his jaw broken in 4 places. He was 70 something years old. and some contradictions were raised, and people were hot, because there was a group of people. I think there were at least 4 who were attacked and harmed. Now, those people who did the beating and the damage, they felt like they were attacked. But of course, that raised the level, because Deruba, member of the Black Panther Party in the 60s and 70s, part of the Panther 21, part of the Black Liberation Army. And so his people started talking about riding on these other people in Atlanta. And we got people together, invited people to discuss this and use the methodology that we had developed, including this code of conduct. And we worked on it and worked on it. And it seemed like whatever issue there was that the people had between the people in Atlanta and the people in Oakland and those related to the Black Panther Party soon became secondary, because I don't think anybody wanted that fight. People, we can't stand another hot war like that in the community. There have been several, and we don't need it again. But we spent months working on this code of conduct. And it was the idea. We had people from the East Coast, the South, the West Coast, the Midwest, from all over. And we worked on it, refined it, took some stuff out that, from the stuff we had in Los Angeles. And in the end, at the end of that process, there were some political issues, and we were like 15 minutes from making it a national project, and it didn't happen. Very sad. And then later on, and part of it was, from folks from LA, Comrade G2 and myself, we weren't healthy enough to continue to fight, in such a close quarters. And it wasn't passed. And then one of the comrades joined with the ancestors at this point. He said, man, we were ready. We were ready to do this. We were ready. And what happened? And when are we going to start again? And other people have taken it up. So it has gone from Southern California to the South, to the East, and to other places. We still haven't continued it, but there are people who witnessed what happened. Very respected people who also want to carry on and put this into place. I appreciate that. I want to help. Nobody's trying to get famous off of this. Nobody's trying to get rich off of this. And it's ours. It's not any particular person or organizations. It's ours. Again, this is for the Black nation. It's not for any particular group of people. So,
and I have maybe another question about the documentation of any and all of that for its own sake, right? You mentioned referred to at least one other tribunal, the People's Tribunal with the police officer, and of course, and the conflict resolution with the attack on the elder. Where is there a place where these instances are, documented, explained, collectively documented for study for self-study, for, to support deeper analysis and planning and building around it.
I don't think there's a central place. I mean, we got stuff, but it's not been published. I mean, it's out there, but it's not been collected. We have what we did, but we haven't. There hasn't been like a thorough study of how these things have occurred across the country, or across the Black nation. Now there are other things that have happened. Of course, there are other instances where there have been what could be described as offenses against the Black nation, as that's how we termed it. Various assassination attempts, tortures, thefts, even claiming the rights to certain things. One of the things we're doing is kind of gearing up for Black August. There was what was it? I forgot whether it was a copyright or something, but it was done by people not from California, not from the originators, not from the original Black August Organizing Committee, and they came into conflict. So, there's been kind of a, poor relations and bickering. Again, hopefully not to the point of violence, which is again what we're trying to resolve issues, not cause more issues. But these things are outstanding, and they come up and then they either kind of fizzle out, or there's just a low intensity. It's like background noise that continues, and sometimes for years. Like the issues between the bad feelings that were created in Southern California between the Black Panther Party and the US organization, or the organization US. People are still angry about that.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, you got gang sets who lost people last week, and they get together and they talk, they're ceasefires, and they come to terms with murders and all of this that's fresh in their minds. They've experienced them. People are still angry about what happened in 1969. And how do we do that? Well, it would be nice if there was a process.
Yes.
And if we could implement something. But then the people have to be willing.
Right.
The willingness, which actually brings to mind another aspect of the tribunal process and the conditions process, and part of what included a recognition and a need for mental health support, psychological support, right?
Yeah.
That there was an internal emotional, right? It spoke to the whole human being. It began to speak to the whole human being.
Yes.
Right? Which I also feel as an important advance in, this kind of sense of nationhood, societyhood. What does it mean to be part of a people? With an identifiable value system. How well does that system respond to all of the aspects of human life? And how much has that been talked about, addressed, put on the table? The aspect of healing our mental, emotional integrity, the
Hmm.
that which keeps us going and keeps us live and keeps us sane. And so I just thought that that was also a very important element, um, and very important, interesting innovation in the conditional element. Literally seek professional help before you
Hmm.
come back. Think about coming back into community. You need healing, to really bring
So
that
I
up.
have a couple of questions, and first for you, Tasha, you're talking about, and maybe you're talking about everybody, perpetrators and victims needing to get that right. Okay,
Mhm,
so that
mhm,
was a simple question. The other one is really something else you said, and then James, you answered right in terms of whether these tribunals have been documented, and James said yes, but they're not like collected anywhere. What are the possibilities for them being collected, and what would it take for that to happen?
Yeah, well, I wish I knew, because I've been trying to get documentation from the
Mhm.
1980 tribunal for years at
Mm.
this point. And I've asked about it, and yeah, well, they're
mhm,
apparently in the box someplace. I probably need to go to the Southern California Library,
mm,
Mhm.
um, on Vermont,
Mhm.
and dig there. It was hosted by the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and most of those people are gone. You
Mhm.
know, uh, the um,
mm,
the the Elders Council, which was kind of like a tribunal, kind of,
Mhm.
in Atlanta, about this attack from one organization to on another. Um, that's pretty well documented. They have a website, um, and uh, but the other ones, like, we've put stuff out,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's accessible, but people got to look. In
Right.
fact, and I could probably imagine how
mm,
it happened, but we had a Facebook
Mhm.
account, and
Mhm.
it was trashed by
Mhm.
somebody, and so they
Mhm.
took it off.
Okay.
Uh, so uh,
Okay.
same thing happened with a Black August account. People who
Hmm.
had
mm,
been associated,
Mhm.
uh, our Facebook accounts had been um,
mm,
deactivated.
Mhm.
So the information can be hard to find. So we
Okay.
just can't say, "Oh, look over here, look over there." We do need to have
mm,
a steady, permanent place,
Yeah.
and a collection, and that's you know, and it not necessarily laziness, but uh, uh,
Well, it
it's
seems
it,
like
it
sounds like
hasn't
you
happened yet.
like a dedicated, intrepid researcher, willing, to
right.
and able to find the time to do that,
Yeah.
Right.
which is yeah, absolutely worthwhile, particularly in the framework of like a nation and nation building, right? And being able to document that kind of history of the nation, those
Hmm.
practices. So um, we are at 8 o'clock, and we had thought we'd only go an hour. Um, is there anything you'd like to add, Tasha or James, or both of you?
I've asked my questions and have been quite satisfied and inspired with the responses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I've I do want to say this is the 10th anniversary of the African People's Liberation Tribunal, held in 2014. Um, Sandy Caesar Chimaranga is putting a program together, so we can um, mark that anniversary, that 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yes.
uh, to discuss where we are, uh, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. Um, so
Hmm.
And for those people who don't know me, I'm not an Arab. I'm not an Israeli. I'm not a white man. My grandfather was James Elijah Brown Sr. He was born into slavery in 1863. My grandfather.
Mhm.
That's
So
right.
there's some foolish people who run around thinking that people's allegiance to the Black nation is based upon how much melanin they got.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think it would be safe to say that I've proven my allegiance.
Beyond.
Well, way beyond Clarence Thomas.
Exactly. Way beyond.
So
Yeah.
I may
And a
not be
whole bunch
perfect.
more folks.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So people want to challenge again. We've and we didn't cover these attacks, but we have been attacked, and
Hmm.
to the point where one of the comrades like, forget it. I'm just going to just finish this story with Taco. So, no, you
Hmm.
can't do that. You cannot do that.
Hmm.
But some of that is based on threats.
Hmm.
Again, putting stuff in motion and then hiding your hand.
Hmm.
So we've had to endure that. But we're going to talk about in this program Tandy Sizway is
Yes.
putting together. Hopefully, we will talk. We will have people who did testify. We will have some of the exhibits. We will have some of the participants from all facets of the tribunal, and hopefully reinvigorate this process of spreading this code of conduct. Because honestly,
Yes.
I think with this recent verdict against this former chief executive, he has lots of people aligned with him and pledging allegiance to him,
Right.
who would carry out acts of violence
Yes.
against all so-called enemies, but especially
Yes.
Black people.
Hmm.
Yes.
And I think his recent move of bringing two so-called gang members who are being prosecuted for murder and attempted murder,
Yeah.
I think he's saying, "Hey, not only
Yeah.
do they like my shoes,
Right.
they can be
Absolutely.
they can and not and increasing allegiance to him
Right.
Yes.
to where it's 18%. This is embarrassing almost.
This is embarrassing.
This is
But
embarrassing. This is disheartening.
he's saying this is the future of conservative. This is what he said,
Hmm.
pointing to these so-called
Yep.
gang members.
Yep.
This is the future of conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
But what does he mean? And they're pledging allegiance to him. Is he trying to set up a situation like in Haiti where people are running for their lives? They can't. There's no functional government because so-called gangs are running amok that make the two Tonton Macoutes death squads from 1950s under Papa Doc to make them look mild because of the gang warfare that disrupted the electoral process in Jamaica. I think he's up to some mischief. I think he's up to no good. Well, they, not he. I hate to personalize it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, they've been probing into our community in Southern California and probably elsewhere. We have pictures of them, and I think we really need to take heed to the possibilities
Absolutely.
of disruption and violence in the community
Mhm.
from inside and from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And an
Yes.
an integrated code and provide all the more cohesion
Yes.
and common focus and uh, regulation of standards and behavior. Um,
Hmm.
much needed, and that also may be the topic of a soon to be produced another program with you,
Yeah.
good brother
Hmm.
James Simmons, in our series that we've done about counterinsurgency and on just the rise of the white nativism and fascism and etc.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Remember, in the 60s and 70s, people talked about fascism and said, "Ah, you people are crazy. Fascism in the United States, of course, that's ridiculous." Mainstream politicians, not that we needed them to identify fascism, but
Mm-hmm.
fascism is here. But Comrade
Mm-hmm.
George said, "Fascism is here,"
This is what it
Mm-hmm.
and
is.
it's just that
Right.
it didn't affect them at the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
And we just gonna wait for them to deal with it? No, I hope not. I hope not.
Indeed.
With that, we will say goodnight to you out there in YouTube and Facebook and Twitter world. James, thank you so much. This was exactly what we were hoping it would be, right? Just a
Absolutely.
conversation, around that process and those underlying principles. Let me remember to say, if you are, maybe this applies to Facebook also, but definitely on YouTube, like, subscribe, share,
Mhm.
let your friends know. It'll be up on the YouTube, the Joko Collective YouTube channel. James, again, thank you. This was just out of sight.
Absolutely.
Well, y'all make it happen. If it wasn't for you all, um, like I said, I feel like I need to start reading more books.
That's always a good thing.
A bunch of educators educating the
All
community. I
right.
love it.